welcome to round 2 with Jeskai Flash. We end up game 1 keeping a hand that's merely okay on the draw. We've got a little bit of interaction. We're going to have to play some catch up unless we draw some early stuff. And our opponent is basically the only deck that plays this card is Ad Nauseam, if the 2 Lotus Blooms didn't also give it away. So there's really no reason for us not to take the Pain here. So I probably should have played these on tap to just conceal info about my hand. And here I just main phase the click to make a pact negation a little more awkward. The reason being that I can... So if my opponent packs, so if I upkeep it and they pact, they can like play something, they might not have the Angel's Grace or like the Adnals or something. They can make different decisions, right? They know with their draw step info whether they're going to have to use blue mana or potential Angel's Grace to pay for pact the next turn. Whereas if I do this now, they're forced to pact here to counter it if they want to dodge a discard spell. And then if that happens, then, they're forced into an upkeep action. So it gets pacted though, which probably means we're dead. AKA, absolutely means we're dead. And my opponent draws their entire library, and we're done here. So you may notice our post-sideboard configuration looks a lot like the post-sideboard blue mirror match configuration, except for we've cut all the paths, and we've left in a couple bolts to kind of close. You don't want a ton because they don't actually do anything, and you'll notice that I only have one Runed Halo in the deck. Technically, you can stop Lightning Storm, but almost everyone who's reasonable is going to sideboard into a Lab Maniac here anyways, so... especially because Lab Maniac gives you the alternate kill of going Angel's Grace, Spoils of the Vault for a card not in your deck, and then a draw spell. So I only want one just to randomly make our opponent's life harder. It's better than doing a kind of nothing. Could have had the Blade Splicer, but we'll get to that more in a little bit. So we are on the play for game 2. In this hand, I opt to ship. If you didn't see it, it was basically Dispel, Cryptic, Bolt, Resto Angel, and lands. I didn't like the threat, and I felt like my 6 could be better. And then as soon as I saw the 6, it is better. I get to play my threat underneath a turn 4 kill. You can't tap out on turn 4, and because Ad Nauseam can actually threaten killing at instant speed with Lightning Storm, you actually can't just tap out for Restoration Angel at instant speed on turn 4. And let's see. I'm going to scry into a Scalding Tarn, and I'm going to put it on the bottom of my library because I just want action here. Tap land first, pretty straightforward. There's a blue, more tap lands because I'm not doing anything with my mana. That's a little too late, Gemstone Caverns. Sorry to see you right there. And about now is when I realize that Splicer on the play is one of the best cards because it's a solid clock, like a 5-turn clock, and it comes down before I need to leave up mana at all. The Snapcaster here is also one of the best draws because it lets me have 4 mana up for Dispel, and then if Dispel's countered, I can snap, flash it back, and just shut down the combo. My opponent has put an Ad Nauseam into their hand. Worth noting, just based on the sequence of plays that occurred, I can kind of infer some stuff about my opponent's hand, which means that when they missed this land drop, I shouldn't have been surprised. And they put a card on top with this last Serum Visions. So this bloom is going on the stack, and I've cast Cryptic Command here because I felt like I didn't have any other time where I could reasonably cast it. Also because they need to have land, Ad Nauseam, Angel's Grace, and Pact in the cards that they have. And just like, they have to have left an untapped land on top. There's so many different things going on that it's like this gut feeling I had that just like firing it, what I want to be doing here. It's, you could play a little afraid, but it felt like a good spot to buy some time by countering the Lotus Bloom. Which it ended up being. My opponent draws and plays their Pentad Prism was the one they kept, which is kind of awkward with the Caverns. We clock in for some damage. And let's see here. We are actually in range of putting our opponent to dead, so we bolt. Snap the bolt, and our opponent's virtual dead on boards. And by say virtual, I mean they have Angel's Grace. And I probably should have done this differently. I should have fetched before. There's a spot where my shields are down very quickly. It's just something to keep in mind in these matches where your life doesn't matter, is that right now my opponent could have responded, I couldn't have dispelled. I don't know what they would have cast, but my opponent cast is Holy Light in this format? -1/-1 to all non-white creatures. Something crazy like that. I don't have a good idea. So we crack in, our opponent Angel's Graces, and we second main Serum Visions with mana up. At least Spell Pierce on top. I don't actually know if I should, but I don't think it really matters at this point. I struggle to figure out how my opponent can get out of this. They go for the kill. I have counter, and they concede the game. So after thinking a bit more about it, I opt to swap a Blade Splicer, the 4th one, for Resto Angel. Just the cheaper threat seemed a little more exciting than tapping out when my opponent kills at instant speed, and it really only flickers Vendilion Clique for great value. So that was kind of the direction I wanted to go. I think it's possible that I want the Ruined Halo, the Resto over the Ruined Halo, but I'm not. There's a chance that I get to free roll on my opponent, and I was willing to risk it. Okay, so my opponent is on the play. I mulligan a pretty obvious ship. Just does nothing. And I keep the vision on top because this hand is going to play out a little slowly anyways. It doesn't have a direct threat. I'm going to spend some time tapping mana because of Serum Visions. I end up suspending Ancestral Visions on 1. I'm not sure if that's right because it minimizes the number of Serum Visions I have to get to a hard counter. So I Serum Visions. And I actually should have fetched first, I think. But with 2 ETB tapped lands, I play one of them. Because any way you look at it, unless I top deck an untap land next turn, I'm going to only get to cast 1 Serum Visions next turn while representing an actual hard counter, which I definitely want to do here. Because my hand isn't great, and I want to make a show of strength. So I use the fetch there. You want to generally use your fetches before your scries. Bottom both of those because they do nothing. Just pass with mana up. Spell Pierce maybe, but not against 2 blooms. Opponent plays a Laboratory Maniac. And not looking the greatest. 1 left on the Visions. So Serum Visions, and then I get to Serum Visions again, leaving up a counter but not using my fetch. I'm going to try to not use that fetch for as long as possible. Air quotes counterspell. And here's where I felt like I got lucky. I faded the Spoils of the Vault kill, where your opponent goes Spoils of the Vault, or Angel's Grace, and then Spoils of the Vault for a non-instant card, just uses the draw step to kill you. So at this point, it should be pretty clear my opponent just has literal nothing. Their cantrip bricked off. They don't attack because I could snap in and block. Let's draw a bunch of cards. Main phase snap to dig for more interaction and start the clock. I only have 1 hard counter to leave up, so it's not gaining me anything by waiting. And I leave that negate on top, so I have double counter up the next turn. And here I have the ability to discard. I end up discarding the extra Celestial. I don't want another ETB tapped land necessarily. And the Spell Pierce might do something. It's unlikely, but there's a chance that things maneuver to a spot where it actually forces my opponent to crack a Lotus Bloom or something like that. Save negate literally for only the spells that matter. And so my opponent ends up bottoming with this Temple, which is just this absurdly good sign. Again, no fetch. Can't go shields down here. I don't think I should have played this land. I think I should have played this on tap so I could have negate Snapcaster up. Or actually, no, I thought about this. Sorry. I don't want to play that land. Negate Snapcaster is the same as negate up. That's what it was. And then I can now have the ability to leave up a 1 mana counter as well, and that's why I'm fetching main phase so I can have that 1 mana up. It's not 100% necessary, but I mean the issue is the reshuffles are a little loose there. Opponent bottoms again, which means I'm in a very good spot. Cracking with the Snapcaster. Pay my life just so max mana up so I can, negate, I don't know, just some iteration of spells. The life doesn't really matter. If my opponent attacks with the Lab Maniac, I'm great. And here I try to stick a threat. I stick Snapcaster so that I have the most number of counter spells up. And it's the same clock, or it's kind of the same clock. I kill my opponent in 4 turns, so that's great. And I just counter that immediately. Use my hard counter where applicable. Who cares about flashback? Ambush Viper comes on in. Very good draw of Lightning Bolt. Ups the clock significantly. Clears out Lab Maniac for fear of blocking to reduce the clock or just the spoils combo. And here I just fire off to kill that. Just get it off the board, make my life a little less complicated, less things to worry about. Put opponent to 8. And then I click on my turn to make my opponent pay for Pact in worse ways. They can also just like, I could like click them on draw step, and then I could see like 3 packs, or they could like Angel's Grace in response. I could see like 3 packed negations, and then they could like draw an ad nauseam off the top. I just don't want them to potentially only have like 1 Angel's Grace that I'm like they're able to cast in response or whatever. But they packed it. That's fine. I traded for a counter spell. That makes my counter spells really effective. They end up paying, and then I believe this is the turn where full desperation mode is engaged. Yeah, that is full desperation mode. So here, I mean, I know my opponent doesn't have anything just like empirically from watching how the game played, but it's worth noting that they only have exactly 6 mana up and 2 cards in hand, which prevents them from having a ad nauseum combo that can resolve through Spell Pierce. So I just bolt down the monkey, and conveniently the 7 mana that I have also is exactly enough for me to animate Celestial and attack with Negate up, which again is kind of just locked. My opponent has to cast Angel's Grace to survive here, and there's no way for them to get the total number of cards in hand needed to go off through a counterspell, and they die right there. So that game, I think I definitely got lucky by them not having anything. I did some stuff pretty right in terms of representing counter and forcing my opponent to play longer. Again, that is an issue of only having 4 ad nauseam in your deck. Sometimes you just don't see them if you don't cantrip hard enough. And I was able to kind of exploit that with my slower draw that was able to filter into just enough counter magic to make the end game a hard lock.